All right, we're coming near the end of the first DevOps Days here in Austin. I'm here with Damon Edwards. Damon, how you doing?
Good. Barton, how you doing?
Doing well. So tell us a little bit about DevOps Days, and you're one of the organizers, how long this has been going on, how it came about, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I want to say it was 2010. It's actually interesting because it perfectly intersects with the history of the DevOps movement, really. I think DevOps has been around for different threads have finally merged together. It's one of those things where everyone's like, oh yeah, that's what we call this thing that we've been trying to do. And people have been, ranting in different areas about these ideas and these problems, how to overcome them for multiple years, but several years, going back to sort of the kind of the end of Web 1.0, right? And people said, okay, this is something new and different. How do we build for the future? And but we never really found a critical mass because we all were talking about, we thought different things, but it turns out you need a kind of an umbrella, you need a lightning rod. And in 2010, Patrick Dubois was, to put it shortly, he was over in Belgium watching some of the Velocity live stream, and was watching John Allspa's talk about Etsy's, that time Flickr's 10 deployments per day. Thought this is amazing. He's always wanted to get dev and ops together. He's like, haha, I should have a Velocity conference. And actually, someone said, I want to have a Velocity conference in Europe. Someone said, Patrick, you should do that. Patrick said, I'm going to go do that. And he put together this little, more of a meetup, but he called it a 2-day thing. And he literally liked the term, he wanted dev and ops together, and it was 2 days. So he called it DevOps Days. And he liked the DOD, like Dead on Delivery acronym for some goofy reason. He's that kind of guy. And so yeah, that's how they came up with it. It was DevOps Days. And then people went away and they were tweeting about it. They got tired of having those extra characters on the end of the hashtag. So they just lopped off the days, and it became, #DevOps, and the name stuck, and suddenly everybody kind of found an umbrella for the problems they've been trying to solve for years, and the term DevOps took off, and that was, I think, 2010, and then we had, the first one was in Ghent, and then, I think it was Ghent, and then the second one was in Mountain View, right after the next Velocity, and we...
Is that where you got involved?
That's where I got involved, right, and then... I called it Patrick's Day. Let me help organize one out here after Velocity, and we try to do it every year after Velocity now. It's going to be the third year coming up in a couple months here, and we try to do it right after Velocity, somewhere nearby, so all people that fly in, they can stick around for a couple extra days and do the whole DevOps talk, and it's part talks in the morning, we invite people to come and give focused presentations. We do night talks, which are always fun. It's a little bit of theater, like dinner theater before lunch, and then we do open spaces in the afternoons where people just talk and exchange ideas, and you really get down to brass tacks.
So how many have you had? You've had Ghent, Mountain View, and Austin.
Yeah, there was one in Boston. This will be the third one, Mountain View, coming up. Mountain View is the only place that really repeats, and then we call the Europe one repeats, right? And that was in, we've done 2, 3. Last year was in Gothenburg, Sweden, which I'm missing one. I think this year it's going to be in Italy, which is pretty exciting. There's DevOps Days Down Under. Can't forget about that Lindsay Holmwood runs down in Australia. So yeah, it's pretty much a worldwide thing. It's kind of cool.
And how have you seen it transform over time? What are some of the trends you've seen? And
I think there's it's interesting. I think it's devolved a little bit away from, for better or for worse, a little bit away from bringing dev and ops together, and more about we've got this deployment to operations pipeline, and we're less talking about why can't these people get along, and more talking about how do we build that pipeline that spans those two sides of the house. So a lot of tool talks, I think, come out of that. But I think, so there's a lot of pent-up sort of angst to talk about these tools. I think now that's kind of run its course. I think a lot of the conversation is switching back to the realization that DevOps is not a technology problem. DevOps is a people problem. It's fundamentally a management problem, right? So how do we organize our companies? How do we put the right processes in place? How do we communicate? How do we measure and share that information to better align and drive our roles in our organizations? And I think that's the conversation is now sort of moving from the tool discussions. Like, all right, we got that. Those will continue, but let's talk more about the organizational issues.
And then, who would you say, just to close with, who would you say makes up these things? is it half developers, half operations, and some other people, or is it mostly developers, mostly operations, or?
I think it's usually a 60-40, 70-30 type mix where it's a little heavier on the operations side. I think it was a little more even to start, and I think because there was so much pent-up desire for operations, I think it's Ben Rocker talks about it. He talks about there's sort of the big, capital DEV, little OPS, or you look at it from the little DEV, big OPS, right? And then you eventually get to where it's just big DEV, big OPS, right? This kind of depends on what your emphasis comes from. I think in the beginning it was definitely very much like operations learning from bringing development techniques, bringing automation techniques to really changing their game. Saying as operations folks, how do we raise our game and accomplish these amazing things? So a lot of pressure was on operations to kind of change. Well, now that a lot of that amazingness is starting to sink in these organizations, it's starting to push back the other way and say, hey, okay, now that we've got our house in order in terms of configuration management, deployment automation, the whole kind of the virtualization and the packaging, and basically ops is starting to really get its act together. Now let's turn around and look back at the dev side of the house and say, what are all the requirements that dev has got to do to make this life cycle better, and how do we really shorten that down to where we're kind of one team, one functional unit. So I think again, it's another one of those, you see it swing one way and we're seeing it swing back the other way.
Excellent. Damon Edwards, thank you so much.
No problem.